Deficits is the next topic. Deficit. Right under this. Deficit is a situation. Deficit is a situation. Deficit is a situation where revenues or income is less than, where income is less than expenditure. Income is less than expenditure. So whenever income is less than expenditure, you call it as a deficit situation. So this is the total budget. In the total budget, if your total expenditure is greater than total income, total expenditure is greater than total income, you call it as total budget deficit. Total income is less than total expenditure. That is called total budget expenditure. So first side heading, budget deficit. Budget deficit. If the total expenditure is greater than total income, then it is known as budget deficit. Full stop. So whenever budget deficit is there, what you have to do? So when budget deficit is there, in order to meet that budget deficit, government normally takes loans. Budget deficit loan appudu you take loans. Full stop. Next line. If there is budget deficit, government increases income through loans. Through loans. Full stop. The loans that is borrowed by government, to meet the budget deficit, is known as fiscal deficit. Therefore, fiscal deficit indicates total borrowings of government. Full stop. Next line. It can be expressed as fiscal deficit is equal to total expenditure minus total revenue receipts plus total non-debt creating capital assets. capital assets. In brackets, non-debt creating capital assets are disinvestments made by government So this is fiscal deficit. What I said fiscal deficit? See, in the budget deficit is when our expenses are more than our income, then we are said to be in a deficit condition. That deficit is known as budget deficit. My parents are sending me 10,000 rupees per month, but I have expenses as 12,000. I am in shortage of 2,000. I am said to be in budget deficit. Na budget deficit lo undi ani cheptanu, because I am facing 2,000 less. So what you do, you have to make up this by extra borrowings. Go and borrow. Whatever the amount that you are borrowing is known as fiscal deficit. Now see, whenever I have this 2K shortage, what I can do? Additionally, I can sell one book which gets me some 500, and I can borrow 1500 rupees. This is also an option. No need to borrow directly. After seeing that you are facing some deficits, what you can do? You can sell some book. Through that you are getting 500. So only 1500 is left. So in that 1500, if you are borrowing, that amount comes as borrowing amount. That amount comes as borrowing amount, and that is known as fiscal deficit. Clear? Fiscal deficit. Now load ento తెలిసిన తర్వాత 2000 rupees I am falling short. So what I will do? I will look whether can I sell anything more. If I sell it, no need for borrowing. After selling it also, if I have any deficit, that deficit you will meet it through borrowings. Hence, fiscal deficit indicates the borrowing of the government. What is the formula? The formula is this. E formula aina okate, E formula aina okate. You understand this or this? Both are same. So I have total expenditure. I have total revenue receipts. You know what are revenue receipts? Direct taxes, indirect taxes, non-tax receipts, plus non-debt creating capital assets. In the capital assets, in the capital account side, you have loans, investments and disinvestments. So disinvestments won't create capital asset debt. So you are writing that. So that makes fiscal deficit. అర్థమైందా? బడ్జెట్ డెఫిసిట్ అంటే మొత్తం బడ్జెట్ లోటు, అందులో ఎంత బారో చేసుకుంటున్నాం అని చెప్పేది fiscal deficit. Hence fiscal deficit indicates borrowing capacity or borrowings of the government. Very, very important. Why I said this formula? In some local exams they will be asking this formula, but normally what they will ask in UPSC, whether it indicates which among the following indicates borrowings of government. Fiscal deficit indicates borrowings of government. This is next one. Full stop. If there is high fiscal deficit, what does it indicate? Borrowings of the government is high. If there is high fiscal deficit, right? If there is high fiscal deficit, it indicates government is borrowing high. Now what happens if government is borrowing high? Huh? If the borrowings are government is high, I said one phenomena. What happens to the private people? Crowded out effect of people. Hence the following are the negative externalities on economy. The negative externalities on economy. The negative externalities on economy. What are the negative externalities? One, crowding out effect of private players. Crowding out effect of private players. Second, more debt burden on the public, more debt burden on the public and on the future generations. Third one, debt service obligation will increase. Debt service obligation will increase. Debt service obligation will increase. Obligation will increase, which results in payment of more interest rates in future. Payment of more interest rates in future. Next, government may resort to taxing the public at a higher taxation rate. Next one, government may resort to more disinvestments in public sectors. Next one, government may reduce what it reduces. Government may reduce the required spending on revenue expenditure and capital expenditure. Full stop. Hence, all this will create a huge burden on economy. Full stop. Governments may as a final resort take up monetization of the deficit. It means printing new currency to meet the deficits. Full stop. It will have extremely negative impact due to increased money supply and issues of inflation. What I am saying is, look, I have budget deficit. The amount that is sent by my parents, it is not sufficient for me. As a result, I am borrowing from some friends. That borrowing which I do is known as fiscal deficit. Now what happens if fiscal deficit is increasing steadily for the government? If there is increasing fiscal deficit, we all know that if an individual is borrowing, if you are always borrowing, at one day you will reach the capacity where you will not be able to repay back. Why you will be not able to repay back? What is the disadvantages in borrowing? First thing is there will be debt burden. Always people will call you, then we have to switch off our mobiles, then we have to leave the country like Vijay Mallya, right? So this is the thing, debt burden is going to rise. The second impact is debt servicing will be very high. What is debt servicing? In order to service my debts, I have to pay interest rate. That interest rates goes on accumulating. Right? దూకుడు సినిమాలో చెప్తాడుగా బ్రహ్మానందం, వడ్డీ పైన చక్రవడ్డీ, చక్రవడ్డీ పైన భూ చక్రవడ్డీ, విష్ణు చక్రవడ్డీ వేస్తానని. సో అలా వేసుకుంటూ వెళ్తారు వీళ్ళు. సో దిస్ ఈస్ ద థింగ్ విచ్ హ్యాపెన్స్. What does this mean? Interest rate is going to be very high. And one day, again the interest rates will be so high, leave about paying your principal amount, this will be very high. Right? So tomorrow, if your father is sending 10,000, you have to pay 4,000 to the interest. So that will be your situation. Clear? So this is called, the interest rates are rising to the maximum, and this is creating a trouble. And look at the revenue expenditure of Government of India. In the revenue expenditure of Government of India, what I said with the highest revenue expenditure? You have written one last note point. Revenue expenditure is highest for what in India? Interest payments. అంటే మనం తీసుకున్న అప్పులకి వడ్డీలే ఎక్కువ పోతున్నాయి మన ఎక్స్పెండిచర్లో. After that, it was followed by subsidies. That is what you have written yesterday. Which means, already I have taken loan, and today my loan is so huge that out of all my revenue expenditure, 20 paisa is going to this. If I am spending 1 rupee, 20 or 25 paisa is going for this. So interest rates are very huge. That adds to your revenue expenditure again. Now I said revenue expenditure is always dangerous for the country because it doesn't give any asset for you. Right? Next, third one, when the fiscal deficit is increasing, government may resort to various means to increase the income. What are the various ways to increase the income? Go for taxation more. Now if you are taxing more, what happens? One thing is the poor people will suffer more. The second thing is tax evasion happens. Even the rich people won't pay. If you are collecting 40%, 50% from rich people, will they pay? No. So tax evasion happens. That will lead to other issues. So this is one way to increase the tax. The second way is to increase the non-tax revenue. How? SIT has to be increased. If you are charging extra on services, people may not buy it. So that is one problem. Or go and disinvest more and more. If you are disinvesting more and more, then government will be losing the assets very fastly. So these are all the issues. As a last measure, what government can do is, government can take the printing press and it can print the fresh currency, because it is with RBI to increase, release that fresh notes. What is that fresh notes called? M0 money, high powered money. They can come, they can print it and they can release it. But what happens if they are releasing money like as they wish? Money supply will be distorted. If money supply is distorted, and then we'll go back to the third chapter. Right? What is money supply? What is the impact of money supply? What happens if there is huge money supply? There will be problems of inflation. Right? దీనికి తోడు అవి ఆడవుతాయి అప్పుడు. Right? Like this, you will be in biggest trouble. Hence, in the maximum scenarios, governments want to choose for monetization of deficit. This is one option that you have. Monetization of deficit means I have certain deficit, I have printing press with me, I cannot open my printing press and print, and I cannot give it to you people because it will have its own impact. And I have shown you clearly in inflation what are the impacts of inflation. So you cannot do. If you are doing, that is going to be worst thing. So but that is one option government has, monetization of deficits. You understood what is monetization of deficits means? Monetization of deficit means printing new currency and releasing into the economy to circulate your or to reduce your debts. Like this, fiscal deficit is very, very dangerous. Previous year mains question. What is fiscal deficit? What are the disadvantages of fiscal deficit? How to remember? మనం ఎక్కువ అప్పుల్లో ఉంటే ఏం ప్రాబ్లమ్స్ ఉంటాయి? If you are in borrowings, what is your problem? So write the same problems for government. మన పేరు this government is bet call. So what is the simple thing? The simple thing is set by our ఎల్డర్స్ రైట్, ఎట్టి పరిస్థితుల్లో అయినా సరే అప్పులు చేయకండి అంటారు. ఎందుకు? దిస్ ఇస్ ద థింగ్, ఎదర్ దట్ ఈస్ ఫర్ ఎన్ ఇండివిజువల్ ఆర్ ఫర్ ఎ కంట్రీ, ఇట్ గోస్ విత్ ద సేమ్ థింగ్. This is called fiscal deficit. So I said, what is budget deficit? What is fiscal deficit?